Excellent. My name is Leonid Shafir. I'm from Canada, and I wear different hats and do different things. Well, first of all, I'm a founder and CEO of a toy company called Play Maze, and this is a startup that specializes in the educational puzzle maze toys. Second, as I said, I wear different hats. So in the evening, I work for myself. By day, I work in the public sector as an economic analyst. And the scope of my analytical and research projects involves various files related to education policies, to labor market analysis. In addition to this, my academic background is also in play-based learning and anthropology of play. So all these interests and current projects come together in today's presentation, because I know that many of the presenters focus on specific projects. I prefer, by virtue of my work and training, to do a more systemic, high-level approach. And today I'll talk about the ways in which arts can be used to enrich and reinforce scientific learning. And I'll explain why I'm talking about such things, which seem to be on everybody's agenda today. So that's an overview of what I do and what I'm interested in and why I'm going to talk about it today. So if that's okay, I can start my presentation now. Let me share my screen. So, as I said, my name is Leonid Shafir. I already explained what I do, so let me switch to the next slide. What are the problems that I want to talk about? Well, first of all, in my professional and research and volunteering activities, I see that on the one hand, there is a widespread interest in sciences. On the other hand, there is an equally widespread misunderstanding of the value of the arts for scientific achievement. In other words, many parents and even unfortunately educators maintain a very one-sided focus. Sciences, they think science is everything that you need to do, disregarding arts, and consider them trivial. In other words, we tend to forget that the multidisciplinary learning, which encompasses both arts and sciences, is both beneficial for a student and needs a foundation for innovative thinking and learning. This is the first problem that I'm going to address. Second problem is that parents and educators who understand the value of arts often have difficulty engaging students and interesting them in the arts. I'll talk about two ways of interesting students that seem to be somewhat under the radar. So they're not part of a common discourse of how to interest students. Based on these problems, I structured my presentation as you see on this slide. So first I'll talk about STEAM, which is education format that combines both arts and sciences. Second, I'll overview the arts benefits in the context of STEAM and beyond. Third, I'll talk about two ways for this presentation to interest students in the arts. And in this presentation, I'll use terms students, children, and young learners interchangeably, because I don't mean just university or high school students. So let's start with STEAM. What is STEAM? It's not difficult to find definition of STEAM online, but the problem is that these definitions, in my opinion, often miss the point. STEAM is interdisciplinary approach to learning that uses science, technology, engineering, the arts, and mathematics, and to go beyond mere technical skills and engage entire student personality. And this is important, because many other approaches focus just narrowly on scientific learning. They just train analytical capacity and memorization of facts. STEAM goes way beyond this. It talks to the entirety of student personality, to students' emotions, to students' feelings, and this is what enables better learning, as well as better development of critical and creative thinking, as well as innovative approach. Today, probably more than ever, STEAM and its arts component are important. This happens because of the pandemic. Because children are more vulnerable than adults, they suffer more from a lack of socialization, and they miss academic support, which prevents them from doing well academically. In addition to this, they suffer from stress and anxiety, which creates psychological challenges for them. However, what is known is that the arts has the capacity to help children cope with stress, improve their scientific performance, and generally help them in studies. So let's review art's benefits. First of all, the arts improve psychological well-being. They help young learners develop their emotional awareness and empathy, so they better understand themselves and relate to others. In turn, this also reduces stress and anxiety. Second, the arts contributes to better learning. Why? Because without art, science can be a dry compilation of facts that are hard to memorize. Besides, it's boring, and children love emotional, interesting experiences. This is where arts come in handy because it can provide the narrative, the story into which scientific facts can be embedded. So it's much more interesting for children to learn this way, and they understand scientific facts better. In addition to this, it stimulates imagination and abstract thinking, which are critical components of innovation as well. So to sum up, art benefits learners in the context of STEAM because it removes limitation of dry and abstract science and enriches learning process with a sense of wonder and expanded opportunities for creativity and innovation. However, the question is, okay, we know what STEAM does to students, but how we can interest young learners in the STEAM? Well, there are at least two ways which I want to talk about, which seems to be somewhat underrepresented in the discourse on the STEAM learning. The first way to interest students is aesthetic appreciation or beauty, as we know it. Well, beauty is an elusive concept because we all know what beauty is when we see it. It grabs our attention and we cannot walk away. However, it's really hard to define in formal terms. All we can say is that beauty can be expressed in terms of proportion, articulation, rhythm, and symmetry. And what matters is that these terms are equally applicable to the works of art as to the world of technology. So let's take, for example, architecture, which is a rather science-intensive field. Architecture has a lot of similarity with music because music is about proportion, articulation, and rhythm. And guess what? In architecture, shapes and structures also establish rhythm and a sense of proportion. Many students love music. So if we guide them to reflect on their hobby from a perspective of proportion and articulation, they will develop an inner awareness of how these qualities manifest themselves through their entire continuum of their experience, and will be able to translate this awareness into their architectural pursuits, and therefore be able to create something that will look as that will have such a professional and unique look as some of the buildings I put on this slide. Second, patterns, symmetries, and interactions are as important in litter painting as they are in engineering and math. Because such concepts are so important, whenever students read or engage in painting, they can be encouraged to explore their hobbies from a perspective of the patterns and symmetries that they encounter. And this knowledge on a more fundamental and profound level will help them establish a connection between their arts activities and the engineering and math projects that they do to create something that will be both advanced technologically and beautiful enough to pass as an object that will attract everybody's attention. Beauty is not just localized in technology or the arts. Nature is the probably main supplier of beauty for us. Natural beauty can be found in different objects. For example, here we see a stone with a nice pattern on it. This pattern is beautiful by itself, but it can also be designed by using fractals, which is mathematical concept. Similar, we can see nice looking spiral patterns on these bright snail shells. This is a great form of learning through beauty in nature because all you need is just to step outside of your house and go for a walk and look what's around you in the park or in a forest or elsewhere. You'll find a lot of examples of such important facts manifesting beauties that tell us about something of the fundamental laws that govern the universe. And it's an opportunity to contextualize what children learn in the classroom and see why such learning is really important to interact with reality and create technological objects that will mimic this beauty or integrate smoothly with nature instead of oppressing. So to sum up, beauty as an important part of various art forms such as paintings, music, and poetry provides a powerful context that sharpens observations and that sorts the essential from the peripheral. Therefore, it can help the aesthetic awareness and the intentional reflection on this subject can help students not just see the beauty in nature, but translate it into sciences to improve their performance. But this is not the only concept. There is another concept which seems to be overlooked that also can draw students to arts and from arts to sciences. It's mystery. Albert Einstein once said that the most beautiful experience we can have is the mysterious. That's a fundamental emotion which stands at the cradle of true art and true science. I couldn't have put it any better. Mystery is indeed a very fundamental thing, an entity upon which art and science rest. But if we just take the sciences, it will be too abstract, too dry. What the art does is that it consummates this experience of the mystery and transforms it into a really learning experience. Why this happens? Because art is contradictory, it's paradox in its nature. It's an unthinkable combination of the known and unknown, of acceptance and rejection. Whenever we see a work of art, we keep asking ourselves, what does it mean for me? What the artist or the creator of this work tried to say, and why do I keep thinking about it and coming back to this piece of art over and over again? This reflection is important by itself because it's a good way to stimulate our thinking capacity and analytical capacity. But this mystery of the art goes beyond rational and mundane because as we think about the creation of others, it encourages us to reflect on our own identity, on our own thinking process. And this points to the very foundation of learning, which, believe it or not, is a mystery as well, because learning process engages consciousness and memory. But nobody knows what consciousness and memory are. We only have hypotheses, but we don't understand what these entities are. However, what we know is that different forms of learning, the arts and sciences, foster brain development, and therefore students who explore both arts and sciences learn better and more efficiently. But this is not everything. When we encourage young learners to think of their own learning process, sort of self-reflection that focuses on consciousness and memory, we prepare them to think of the concepts that at the forefront of today's learning in various advanced sciences. Because consciousness and memory are hot topics in fields as diverse as quantum physics and neurosciences. And if students start thinking about them early, they may as well prepare themselves for a career in such fields. Let's not forget that the creative process is a mystery as well, because we have formal definitions of creativity, but nobody knows what really happens in the mind of a creator. What we do know is that the fusion of arts and sciences helps establish connections between disparate objects, helps finding patterns that nobody's seen before, and discovering new ways of looking at things, thinking outside the box. And this is the foundation of innovation and creativity we're all struggling to establish. To sum up my presentation, multidisciplinary approach seems to be underrepresented, but it shouldn't be this way, because a combination of arts and sciences in the context of STEAM or any other form works much better than narrow-focused learning, and therefore our chances to teach better and the students' chances to learn better and accomplish more depend on the constructive fusion of the arts and sciences and not just on studying science alone. This concludes my presentation. I know that I didn't cover a lot of ground because arts and sciences is a huge subject. Feel free to ask me questions or contact me with the information provided on the slide. Thank you very much. Hello.
Hi. I was waiting to, it looked like Vimy was speaking, but she was muted. So I was waiting to see if she was trying to come on.
You may want to stop sharing. Yeah. Stop sharing.
Okay.
No, Leonid, that was a great presentation. And it's a lot of reflection on what is going into the mind of the student when they stop learning the arts. What happens in my country is similar, like what you found. It's like we are taught everything in the lower grades. And then once we go in the upper grades, we stop learning and then we focus only on sciences or on the arts. The combination of both is going to do amazing things to students and create the interest. I find your research extremely enriching, and I think this is the direction for the future if we want our kids to come up with creativity and innovations. So have you experimented it somewhere?
Pardon?
Have you done some experiment, some testing of the concept with students?
Well, what I described
Speaking about beauty.
I describe it in my presentations based on the experience that I developed during my academic learning, because at this time I interacted a lot with young learners. Also, it's based on my ongoing interaction for professional and business purposes right now with educators, with STEM activists, and experts in the education field. So this is, as I said, I provided a summative, high-level perspective on my presentation of what I've been doing and what I've learned.
Great. It's really great to see. And I like the concept of beauty being like the focus of all the things that will happen for STEM.
I think it's really important because we tend, whenever we teach arts, we still fall back on the analytical concepts. So that's going to benefit you in the sciences. But it's not what many students like. They want to be absorbed and engaged in an experience. Mystery and beauty work well. It's a very fundamental and strong experiences. And they carry many benefits with them, as I explained.
Great. You are doing wonderful. Keep it up. It's very nice research.
I appreciate it. Any more questions?
So where do we go from here to help make more educators aware and to maybe reach closer to your definition of how we should be integrating STEAM? I'm probably not asking it right, but I'm hoping you're getting.
I think I understand your perspective. In my opinion, narrow approach is something that impedes not just learning, but many other processes, including science and our day-to-day experience. Because, for example, learning is not just limited to a school setting. In my experience, this is a constructive fusion of family situation, societal situations, so peer-to-peer interaction, plus school environment. So kids may get great education in school, but if their parents are not interested and don't encourage their academic success, or if their peers don't learn, children will not do very well in school. So the engagement should fit on all levels simultaneously. In other words, education is a process to educate not just the young learners, but also educate the educators and educate the parents. I don't know what efforts in this respect exist in the US, because US is a big country. I know I have some knowledge of what happens locally here and there in the States. I'm from Canada. Here in Canada, successful learning usually happens on a grassroots community level when schools step into community potential and try to find common grounds with parent organizations, with local community centers that provide joint settings and that encourage children to practice learning not just in the classroom, but outside of the classroom. So they get together with their friends from the community and they engage in projects that are beneficial or that are connected with what they learn in school. All this, as I said, is grassroots. It's not based on a specific federal or provincial policy in Canada. And there are examples of good examples and bad examples when such an approach applies. What I think is important is to reinforce such grassroots learning, such grassroots level efforts by sharing experience and by creating some form of overarching communications. For example, here, one of the problems in Canada is that such community projects don't talk to each other very often. They're not even aware of their existence. If there's a platform or forum where they can discuss their approaches, that will improve their performance. if there is a way to consistently and continuously exchange their opinion with professional educators or with policymakers, this, in my opinion, will create positive outputs as well. As of now, this approach exists, for example, among homeschoolers. They're more advanced in terms of both grassroots activities and coordination. So this is one of the areas in which we, as people who are interested in learning in general, not just in homeschooling, can learn because they have a lot of experience they can share. They can be beneficial to others. Another area in which learning, and I'm talking about learning for specific North American context, may happen is by looking at what other jurisdictions are doing, such as Scandinavian countries, such as Finland. Their academic experience and the way they teach seems to me somewhat idealized. Not everything is as great as we read in the media based on my research, but nevertheless, they have something which can be incorporated. Something, but not everything, because you cannot just copy and paste their education experience since it happens in a different culture, in a different history, in a different nation. So it cannot just be blindly applied. But this also requires continuous effort and systemic research. As I see, I'm answering in high level, on a very high level, because specific experiences, specific projects require more discussion, more time.
It's a lot to think about. I think about this with respect to the 7-year-old that I have been, I will call it homeschooling, but it's not homeschooling like in traditional homeschooling. The virtual work for a year is not quite the same as what the efforts that homeschool families put into their programming for their students. So I'm even more concerned now about that lack of cohesion between all of it, all of the pieces that he should be learning, that should be working together, that haven't been. So it's you know, if I think the deficit is just that much greater now than it was before, and I'm not sure how to pull it all back together. Fortunately, we're in a very good school district, so we've been afforded some opportunities online, and hopefully he'll be back in school next year. But you know, even in where I am, I'm in Ohio in the United States, and I think that they don't even start talking about science till like 4th or 5th grade. And if you're not doing all of it, it's so fragmented. To me, it should all be done. Everything should be done simultaneously. It's all interconnected, or should be. So.
Maybe, in my opinion, one of the problems, fundamental problems, is the way sciences are taught, because they're taught as sciences. So we're separating them from the rest of our experience. Here is math class and here's the rest of the world. But in my opinion, everything needs to be integrated. So you need to understand, maybe one of the problems, the way sciences are taught, for example, math, that we explain the formulas, but not the thinking about it. Why Pythagoras, for example, came up with certain formulas. It was based not just on his analytic, not just on the way he wrote formulas, on the way he understood the world. So understanding, perspective comes first, formulas come second. Maybe this is what's missing. Same with physics. Physics is a life science. It's not just about formulas on the blackboard.
Yeah.
One of the things I think you've presented a very good case for why this is important. I think, okay. But now let me ask you a more difficult question.
More consciousness?
You think it's actually going to happen? Do you think what you're proposing will actually happen?
On what level? Are you talking about the level, let's say, of a country?
Okay. I have seen it happen at the level of a classroom. I've seen that.
Indeed.
And then when you start to make it happen at a level of a school, it becomes much more difficult, okay? Because you have all kinds of other issues. I have never seen it happen at the level of a state or a region or even of a country. So do you think it's really going to happen?
Probably not as a key and paste experience, because even in Finland, that I briefly mentioned, one of the characteristics of their education that they have established formal boundaries on the federal level. Then at the school level, they have broad range of opportunities within this framework. what makes it work? That first of all, children are interested in learning. They don't see learning as instrumental thing just to get a good job. Educators are paid well, and it's a prestigious profession in Finland. Third, parents are serious about their children learning, and work-life balance is much better in Finland than, let's say, North America. So such factors work. And therefore, what you may see, let's say, in Helsinki in a school in the national capital may not be the same thing as you will see in other parts of Finland. However, there are some shared concepts, values, and benefits that arise locally, but that benefit entire nation. So my perspective is that what's necessary is probably something similar, an approach that's flexible enough to accommodate grassroots uniqueness, but that can be shared and translated on a higher level, within a greater system, let's say from classroom to school, from school to a district. Obviously, it will not be a copy and paste cookie cutter solution, but it will be a continuum within certain perspectives, and certain approaches are considered and reflected upon. That's my understanding. Because I'll give you a specific experience. As an analyst, I worked in a team of the federal government of Canada that developed the first ever national early learning and childcare framework in Canada. Canada is a country that's similar to the US in a set of provinces or states, as you would call in the US, have their own early learning and education policy. What the federal government did, it provided a broad framework and a uniform set of metrics and concepts. So the provinces and territories can at least compare their approaches together. Before they couldn't. They didn't speak the same language. So in my opinion, ability to speak the same language, but not necessarily repeat the same thing, is a way to go. Because it allows you to learn from others, but it doesn't force you to repeat what others are doing. I know, I sound highly theoretical. Your experience is something that I miss, unfortunately, because I never really taught in a formal setting in a school. I only worked.
Here's the problem. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, at least nobody who's been involved in education. I think they're all going to say you're absolutely correct. But then the question is, if everyone thinks it's correct, why isn't it being implemented? And that's.
But that's the same question you could ask about so many different things that everybody knows it's correct.
I think it depends what you mean by being implemented. For example, in the case of the Canadian Federal Early Learning and Childcare Framework, it's been implemented on a level at which several pillars, so there are 5 pillars in this framework, are shared as a common approach, which was based on 2 years of intensive negotiations between different governments, by the way. I know this for a fact because I was a part of this process. However, once the negotiation was over, there was a common denominator for everybody to move forward. I'm not saying that it's necessary what the US has to repeat, but maybe there is a way to go, at least on a school level, to experiment with it. Because I do understand that different educators, different school boards, different school administrators have different perspectives. What I'm saying is that the process where different parties get together and discuss concepts that they consider important to develop common perspective, common view, may be a starting point. What it will lead to, either a greater diversity with a common shared values, or more integration, where a certain approach is becoming more universal for the entire district, the entire state, entire nation, I don't know. It really depends. As I said, in Finland, it works both ways. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sure this will not be the last we've heard of this. Thank you, very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this. And I'm sure that this recording will lead to many conversations within the teachers' lounge, I'm sure, but I hope also at the school board level. Thank you very much.
I provided my contact information for you to reach me, or contact with me on LinkedIn or elsewhere.
Great. Thank you.
And bye-bye.
Thank you.